Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about the viability of Legends EA. Can a game be good set entirely in a city? Well, the answer is yes. Plenty of popular games have been set in one city only, but can a Pokemon game work like this? A mainline Pokemon game? I don't know, but let's talk about it. So here's the thing. I am one of the people who was pretty upset when I heard that Legends EA would be set entirely within Lumiose City, but over time I've come around to that, and I think that if I do a little self-evaluation, I've come to find that I wasn't upset because I thought it would be a bad game, but it was just really because I love the Kalos region and I love all parts of the Kalos region. It was sad to hear that I wouldn't be seeing these other parts of the Kalos region that I love so much. But I still think that a Legends EA game set entirely in Lumiose City could be a really, really cool thing and just differentiate it from this franchise, like the rest of the franchise, stand out on its own in the same way that Legends Arceus was able to do. Now, what changed my mind? Honestly, as weird as it is, I just went walking around a city. I live near a city. I went to said city and just walked around the downtown. It's a pretty big city. And, it's not Paris, France size, but it's pretty big. And it just hit me that, doing this in the Pokemon world would be a lot of fun. And I'll get into why, because there's so much more potential than I think people are realizing, certainly more than I had realized before. Okay, so first off, let's talk about areas, because one thing that I think that we're doing is we're going, a city, that's boring just because it's all city, right? It's just a bunch of streets and stuff. But that's actually not really true. A city can have multiple things within it. You have parks. I mean, look at New York City, for example. Central Park, a huge park just right there in the middle of a giant metropolis. And Paris has examples of these parks as well. You do have gardens, which, kind of similar to parks, but a little bit different. And you also have sewers. This is actually something that, interestingly enough, was seemingly scrapped from X and Y, being able to explore Lumiose City sewers. So that's pretty interesting, honestly. That was already something in consideration. I would definitely pin this as something that'll be popping up. There's also, not every city has this, but Paris is well known for having the catacombs, a bunch of tunnels underneath the entire city of Paris, which is pretty interesting and definitely something that makes it stand out from other places. And this also makes sense for a Pokemon game, right? Because naturally this Pokemon game is going to let you be able to catch, I'll let you try to finish that sentence, Pokemon, right? And it's going to be a little weird to kind of, sure, there's some Pokemon you can see in the city. I imagine there'll be Pidgey just flying around. Maybe you could toss him some bird seed outside one of the cafes. But it'll be a little weirder seeing a Pokemon like Pyroar just kind of chilling in the middle of the street, right? But having parks, having gardens, having tunnels underneath Lumiose, having sewers underneath Lumiose will make a lot of these other Pokemon make more sense, In gardens, this is where we can find a lot of bug Pokemon and grass Pokemon, and yeah, maybe even the occasional wild Litleo or something. In parks too, depending on the theming of the park, same thing. I can see, there being Litleo in the park or Pancham in the park, right? It makes more sense this way than certainly the other way. You do also have a lot of areas that we already know about that are in the Kalos region. We're going to talk about some areas that we know about in the Kalos region, and we're going to talk about some areas that I think they could include in the Kalos region. So first off, areas that I think are kind of big to note for Kalos are the areas around Lumiose City, because while we're told the game is set in Lumiose City, this is something I've been saying for a while. If you look at the routes around Lumiose City, they very easily could be a part of Lumiose City. You have the Badlands on one side. That's actually called the Lumiose Badlands. The Lumiose Badlands. And it's home to the Lumiose power plant. So that very easily could be considered a part of Lumiose City, right, within its borders. You have to the north of Lumiose City, there is a little playground stuff that's easily just like a park that's a part of Lumiose City. So that's how you can get that swamp route incorporated into there. To the northeast, you have a little water route, just some fishing docks. This one's a little bit harder to explain, but you could just, again, say that this is just like a little pond that's situated right outside the city. It could be a part of Lumiose City. I would say this is the most stretch, but something that I do think does help it is that this is also the route that's home to the Lost Hotel. And the Lost Hotel was once a huge, giant luxury hotel, and it kind of makes sense that that would have existed within city borders, right? Not just on some random route. Then you have, to the southeast of Lumiose, you have a route that is just a bunch of topiary gardens. Definitely feels like it's like a botanical garden part of Lumiose City. And to the southwest, you have a route that's a skate park. Again, feeling like a part of Lumiose City. They did a very good job at making these routes blend seamlessly into a city as you get closer to Lumiose, right? And again, that's my point. I think they could make this a part of Lumiose City, but that's something I've been preaching for a while. I think that's something a lot of people have been preaching for a while. So let's do something original. Let's talk about the areas within Lumiose City we can see. So we do know that there are a lot of cool places within Lumiose City. A lot of this will be dependent on the time period this is set in, of course. I'm kind of in the boat of thinking that this game will be set in the, like, future, but not far future, but, like, you know, maybe 10-ish years after X and Y. And if that is the case, you have Sycamore's Lab. This is a place where you can research Pokemon and all this kinds of stuff. That's definitely a big area, I think. You have the train station. You have several cafes, several restaurants, several stores and boutiques. You have the art museum, which I don't know if y'all care about that, but I care about that. You know, this is a channel that does a lot of theory videos. So, you know, the artwork in Pokemon kind of is pretty lore heavy usually. So I'm pretty excited to see what kind of artwork there is and get to see it in a game where the graphics are better than they were in X and Y, right? Then you also have Alexa's journalism place, whatever you would call that, but that's definitely something that I think could be something that drives the plot. You have various hotels, you have a building with a ghost girl that we better get answers to, and again, if this is set after X and Y, you do have a little private investigator bureau run by Emma. You also, of course, have Prism Tower, which is the Lumiose City gym. I imagine that you can't do a game set in Lumiose City and not allow us to visit that thing, right? And probably the most interesting is that Team Flare's base is actually in Lumiose City. It's underneath their little cafe they were running as kind of a sham. So, you know, that could be something we explore. Maybe now it's overrun with Pokemon. This could be a place where maybe we can find some digital Pokemon, like Rotom or even Porygon. But, you know, that's just speculation. Now, for some things that when I was walking around my city that I saw and thought would be cool to incorporate into Lumiose City. So first off, you have just regular museums. Not, you know, of course Lumiose has their art museum. I'm talking about like a museum of science and history, right? It would be cool to go in there and kind of get more insight into the Pokeball factory that's, you know, up north and kind of how the Pokeballs are made. Also learn about a little more of the history in the Kalos War. Maybe they talk about some brand new general that we had never heard of before who fought in the Kalos War. You know, all kinds of things like that. You do also have some kind of wackier museums. One thing that the city that I walked around in had was a museum that just kind of was like a tourist trap museum. And what I mean by that is like, it's a museum where they advertise having things that probably aren't real, right? Like unicorn horns or things like that. And then, you know, they had some interesting thing, like they claimed to have a lock of like George Washington's hair or something, which could be the case, but may not be. I think it would be funny to see this in the Pokemon world, like, you know, them have something and be like, oh, this is a piece of the mythical Pokemon Jirachi, and like there's some guy in the museum that's like, what? Jirachi doesn't exist. Do people actually believe this? You know, things like that would be really funny. This could even be how you maybe get some items to that tie into the mythical Pokemon, like how you get the prison bottle is that it's here, or Diance's Megastone is in here. Things like that I think would be really, really funny if they're kind of treated like it's a tourist trap, but no, it's not. It's actually real. Or if they did have some tourist trap things too that are just completely fake. Maybe that's dumb. Maybe I'm the only person who wants this, but I think that would be really funny to see in a Pokemon game. Other things are just kind of abandoned buildings, right? Cities aren't all these open buildings. It'd be cool to go into like an old warehouse building, and maybe this is where you can catch some dark type Pokemon like Liepard and Crocodile and Scrafty, right? Then you can have some abandoned factories or even just functioning factories. This can be a great place to catch, you know, again, more poison types, electric types, maybe even some rock types. Then also, there is the fact that you could do a zoo. Now look, one thing I loved about Legends Arceus was how they had those pastures where you could see your Pokemon. You'd be walking around Jubilife Village and you could look over and see a Pokemon you caught in like a little fenced-in area. Wouldn't it be cool if part of this redevelopment project of Lumiose City is building a zoo, and so the Pokemon you're catching are on display in a zoo, and like you can go see your Pokemon in the zoo? I think that would be really neat. You also can do the Go-Go taxi. You could have like a stable set up for them where you can see the Go-Go and the Skidoo. I think that would be a lot of fun. I don't know if they do that, but just trying to illustrate that, you know, a stable in a metropolis doesn't make a lot of sense, but it does when you're thinking about where this is taking place, right? And lastly, you have just some subdivisions. There was this one little like neighborhood that I walked through when I was in the city, and it was nice. Like the trees just were kind of all encompassing, so like you were walking under just leaves. Like there, it was like you couldn't even see the sky, if that makes sense. And it just felt very tucked away, even though I was right there in the middle of a big city. So it'd be cool to see that implemented as well. Things like that, just areas where it kind of feels like this escape, but it's not. It's right there in the middle of the city. I don't know. I really think that this could be a game that just takes our breath away and makes us think that this game does stand out from other Pokemon games, and that the environment of it is very different despite it being just a city. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. I'm actually very positive on how they'll tackle this. I'm not someone who plays many games outside of Pokemon, so I haven't played Spider-Man, which is a game set entirely in one city, but I understand it's really good, and I think people who've played that do have hopes for these games. But for those of you who are like me, here's your hope. I am arguably the biggest Kalos fan in the world. I'll go ahead and I'll make that bet. I love Kalos so much, and I have high hopes for this, even though I'm not seeing all of Kalos, because Lumiose City is not my favorite part of Kalos, but I still have high hopes. So I do think you should too. And who knows, maybe we can revisit this in, you know, however many months when ZA comes out and go, wow, we were wrong, or wow, we were right. Let me know what you think. Are you happy about being set in one city or not? Do you think those surrounding routes will be included or not? Let me know. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and until next time, I'll see all of you later.